We begin with the sprint towards Election Day, now just 73 days away. And breaking this morning, Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz are taking their bus tour to South Georgia on Wednesday. It is the first time the two will appear together in the battleground state. On Thursday, Harris will also hold a solo rally in the Savannah area. The swing state blitz comes on the heels of a joyous Democratic National Convention where Harris prosecuted her case against Donald Trump.
My early memories of our parents together are very joyful ones. A home filled with laughter and music, Aretha, Coltrane, and Miles. At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close." But my father would say, as he smiled, "Run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you." As a prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious.
Joining us now are some serious people. Former Republican Communications Director Tara Setmayer. She is co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project. And my friend Jason Kander. He is an Afghanistan veteran and former Missouri Secretary of State. Jason Kander is a star, Michael Steele.
Yes, indeed. No, good morning to you.
So is Tara, but Jason Kander.
We got stars. This is all stars all morning long. Welcome to you both. Jason, let's just start with the heart of the matter, because at the end of the day, everything at a convention boils down to one important moment. Let's listen to that one important moment right now.
On behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
It all comes down to that moment, and it crystallized, I think, in so many respects, that transition that everyone talked about and wrote about leading up to the convention. But she brought it home, and, Donald Trump was unserious, as she said, is an unserious man, but this was a serious moment for her. How did you assess this convention this week? And particularly, what did you feel in that moment? I can tell you what I felt, but you're the guest, so you tell us.
Thanks, Michael. Look, for me, the convention had, for lack of a better way of putting it, just really good vibes. And that moment in particular underlined what at least folks here in the middle of the country are thinking about in an election. As my good friend Simone would tell you, being from Nebraska, I'm from Missouri, it's what people want to know is too often thought to be, what do you think? Do you agree with me? But that's not what people want to know. What people want to know from a presidential candidate is, do you care about me? Do you see me? And that moment was Kamala Harris making very clear that she cares more about Americans than she does about her own career or her own fortunes. And that obviously created a very large distinction between her and former President Trump.
Tara, there was also a lot of talk about unity and a lot of Vice President Harris really showing Americans the type of leader that she will be. Take a listen to this piece of her speech.
None of us have has to fail for all of us to succeed. And that in unity there is strength. You know, our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are.
There are two pieces there, Tara, that I want to talk about. There's the unity piece and the contrast with Donald Trump, but there's also that piece about not telling people who you are, showing them who you are, and that seems especially relevant given the historic nature of Kamala Harris's candidacy, right? That she could have stood up there and she could have talked about the historic nature of her candidacy. She could have told you about how a woman can be president, a woman of color can be president. Instead, she just did it. She just showed people, this is the type of leader I am going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting because when she said that, I was in the room, I was in the arena. It was absolutely electric. I'd never experienced anything like that. And I've been to 6 Republican conventions, and I can tell you that this Democratic convention, which was the first one I'd ever attended, was unlike anything I've experienced in politics. And listening to Kamala Harris's speech, I was part of the many women in that room that were wearing suffragist white as an homage to the legacy of the women who came before us that laid the foundation for someone like Kamala Harris to be in this moment at this time. She didn't have to put it out there the way Hillary did in 2016. Women already understood the assignment. And we know that in this moment now that it's bigger than the identity politics that some want this to be. So when Kamala Harris gave her speech, which I thought was excellently delivered and written, because it was a narrative that I think a lot of Americans were unaware of about her personal story, but it was very relatable. Very relatable, and that's important. She was able to connect. And the idea of showing people who you are, not only is she showing America who she is and where she came from and what she stands for, it's also really indicative of the contrast between who Donald Trump is and who MAGA is, who J.D. Vance is, what they represent, what his movement represents. They show us who they are every day. Repeatedly, they show us and they tell us. And that vision for America is one that I don't think most Americans are okay with. They don't want the chaos. They don't want the corruption. They don't want the felonies. They don't want the insults, the petulance, the constant denigrating of America. Michael knows this. When you're at a Republican convention, Republicans are always the rah-rah USA, patriotic flag people. Let me tell you, they don't have ownership over that. They don't. And this DNC demonstrated that. There were more cheers of USA and America and all of that than I have seen in a very long time, where people embrace America and what makes America great, even with our flaws. You're not seeing that from the other side. And Kamala Harris is really embodying that now, which is why you're seeing her do so well in the polls. People want that again. It's hopeful. It's joyful. That's what we want for a future.
You know, I am really struck by the USA chants and the flag waving, because and Mrs. Obama said this week, Jason. She said that no one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American. And then you got Peggy Noonan. We don't even have it up, but when Tara said that, it made me think about this. Peggy Noonan wrote in the Wall Street Journal this week that Democrats stole patriotic symbols. They stole the flag. Since when do Republicans own the flag? I'm just very confused, Jason. I thought we were all Americans.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, Simone. It kind of worked out perfect. It felt like the Olympics were just led perfectly into this convention. It almost felt like it was the same programming. And what gets me about it is it's a changing definition of what patriotism means over time. The Republican modern definition of patriotism really started with the whole Colin Kaepernick won't stand during the anthem thing, and that's a patriotism of exclusion. That's a patriotism of, patriotism means only this, and it means an allegiance to this symbol, not these values, but this symbol, right? And then that can become identity politics over time. as it bleeds into the idea that patriotism is geographic, because, you know, the idea that here in the middle of the country, I'm in the real America, or that patriotism is a matter of, say, religion or what you look like, your race, that kind of thing. But, you know, I said this a few years ago, and I see it now. I'm not taking credit for it, but I think it was a natural progression taking root in the democratic patriotism of the left, and that is that patriotism is not about making everybody stand up and salute the flag. Patriotism is about making this a country where everybody wants to. That is an inclusive type of patriotism, and that is what we saw at the convention. And I absolutely agree that America is ready for that. America, you know, is tired of this rancorous politics over the last several years, and is tired of having one side feel like the only way they can win, and this being the Republicans, is by telling you that America kind of sucks right now. And a lot of us don't want America to suck. We want a version of America that's pretty great, and that's what the Democrats are offering.
We started the conversation talking about, you know, the excitement of the moment with the vice president accepting the nomination, Tara. And our friend, Mr. Kander here, has written an interesting piece in which he notes Harris was one in a small group of people in the political world who continued to call. I don't know how much she actually needed my advice, but that stuff when she asked for it, and I don't know how much I helped, but her asking made me feel valuable at a time when I sort of given the world permission to forget about me. That's some powerful stuff, and I think, you know, not to embarrass Mr. Kander here because he did write it, but it is poignant in many respects. A lot of Americans identify with that because what Republicans had largely done, and the point was just made by Jason, they felt isolated. You know, you don't own the flag unless we tell you you do. You don't own, you know, the symbols of this country unless we tell you you do. Just before we go to break, about 30 seconds, what is your feel on that narrative put out there by the vice president in her launch of her presidential bid for the fall?
I think she's been really smart and as a political observer about where the country is and what it means to be an American. And it's true, for years Republicans have co-opted those symbols and that idea. But enough is enough because the Republican Party is unrecognizable now. And Democrats have a great opportunity to reintroduce what the party represents for everyone. And we used to say for Republicans that we were the party of the Big Ten. Well, everyone can see with their own eyes what the Republicans have turned into. It's certainly not a party of big tent politics and welcoming people in. I couldn't even walk into the room if I wanted to go to a Republican convention now because of how vitriolic everything is. If I have a difference of opinion and you don't salute to the dear leader, it's become all about Donald Trump. It hasn't become about dedication to America. So Kamala Harris embracing the idea of we the people and reintroducing that messaging to the country is very appealing and really, really smart politics, and it has the benefit of being true coming from her.